Welcome into episode 368 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Brew, Scott McLaughlin, and today we are joined by Tom Carroll, who is a digital content producer at WEEI. Tom, this is your second stint at WEEI, correct?
Yeah, so I guess third if you count internships. I was with Mutt and Merloni back in the day, summer of 2013, which was a crazy summer in Boston. Was there with them, came back after I graduated from Emerson, and then I was with EEI for about a year, got a job at ESPN, and then ended up being at a bunch of different places over the course of a decade and came back in July. So I'm home.
He's home. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Not currently, though.
Yeah,
No, he's in St.
currently, and the biggest reason we have Tom on today is Tom is in St. Louis, actually at his wife's childhood home, visiting family out there, and was at the game last night covering it for us. So Tom was on the scene for, guys, I think what was the biggest win of the year so far? Certainly the biggest period of the season.
It was one of the worst games I've ever had to watch, but it was a big win.
Well, for 40 minutes, definitely, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, that was hard to watch for definitely for 40 minutes. And I wasn't in full belief they're gonna win that one. So
it was ugly. And it was two teams that have been struggling a lot. I think people in St. Louis, they view the Blues in a much different light than the way people in Boston are viewing the Bruins, where expectations are really high. St. Louis, it's not high right now. They know they're in a rebuild. Everyone hates their head coach. Everyone hates the way that their best players are playing. Their power play is horrible, although it wasn't last night, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So it's two franchises going in different directions, right? Like the Blues are kind of on the beginning stages of what they want to be their next window to open up here, where the Bruins are kind of, I would say, towards the tail end of one window, while also trying to open that next window with some of these younger guys. The Bruins are kind of in a retool as opposed to a rebuild, people like to say. From my view, you guys are much closer to it than I am.
Yeah, so Tom, it's actually a pretty interesting time for you to be at a Bruins game on the road because there are a lot of heavy implications, I believe, in the wake of this game potentially had it gone south, and maybe the couple games ensuing. And it's possible if last night went south, there'd be a much different storyline in Boston, and you would have been there live to cover it. But you talked to us earlier before recording, and this can be your opening shift. We'll all do our traditional opening shifts, but I don't want to give it away. So why don't you talk to us about how it was in the room afterwards?
So it felt like a playoff game. And, I've covered playoff games for all the teams in Boston and teams outside of the market. And that locker room sounded to me like a team that had just won a playoff game. They were hooting and hollering literally like they were advancing into the next round of the playoffs. And, guys were fired up. The music was loud. They were all eating celebratory pizza. And I got to say, the pizza in St. Louis is not very good, but wherever they got it from, it had these, the little pepperonis, the ones that kind of like curl up a little bit. Like guys both on the team and like ops guys were all walking around all excited about these pepperonis. It was really funny. So you could tell they really wanted this one.
Professional athletes, just like us.
Exactly.
I also get very excited about pepperoni.
Well, yeah, pepperoni is one of the best things in the world. So you could tell they wanted it. And, Brian, you said it without saying it. The hot seat is there for Monty, right? And it's clear they really like this guy. Trent Frederick was talking after morning skate about how Monty's a guy that really helped build his guys up and has these one-on-one conversations with dudes and helps them with their confidence. And when you see a team play for a coach and really dig deep and have the third period that they had, it kind of makes you think twice about calling for his job the way that, half the Boston media has over the last 3-4 weeks here. So that vibe in the locker room last night was really cool to witness. And it makes you think, okay, was this kind of the jumping off point that they needed? They needed to have a game like this to really send them in the right direction. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's crazy because fans, media, coaches, players, everybody's been seeing the same product. Everybody knows it hasn't been nearly good enough. And yet, after the win last night, you look at their record in November and they're 4-1-1. But it's felt like it's been, the complete opposite. And so, yeah, I think the first 40 minutes of last night, you're getting a lot of the same that we've seen. You're getting, uninspired or just anticlimactic 5-on-5 play at best. And then special teams. And Bridget, thanks for checking me online last night. St. Louis had the worst power play in the league, not one of the worst. And in fact, they still probably do. They had not scored.
The Bruins might be worse now. I'm gonna check.
They might. They had not scored a power play goal on home ice heading into last night. But of course, at least through 40 minutes, they were 2 for 3 on the power play against Boston. Through 40 minutes, Boston's 0 for 4 on the power play.
I was right.
Hampus Lindholm, Boston's not worse, Bridget? Well, there you go.
Our last now.
There you go.
11.8%. And yeah, St. Louis jumped all the way up to 27th with those 2 power play goals. So
I was sitting with some of my friends from the St. Louis media that I worked with when I was working out here, and they kept complaining about the Blues power play. And I kept telling them the Bruins PK is not very good. So you guys are if you're going to have a game where your power play looks a little bit better, it's going to be tonight. And obviously that happened, that played out. But, Bruins figured it out at the end, but it almost bit them in the ass until they woke up in the third. Right.
And one of their solutions, hopefully, was that Hampus Lindholm would replace Charlie McAvoy as the quarterback on power play 1. He goes to the locker and misses the rest of the game after blocking a shot. So the Bruins are playing not great. It's same story, different day. And then all of a sudden in that third period, it's just they found a way to win. And I think Tom, you mentioned it earlier, but you gained a lot of confidence. They felt like it was a playoff win because there was clearly a huge, burden on their shoulders. And I think that over the course of a season, far more so than video sessions and practice reps, I think confidence can heal all wounds. It's crazy how confidence can, kind of spread through all elements of your game. So clearly special teams after last night's game still has sucked. But I'm curious to see if the confidence, especially with Charlie McAvoy stepping up, maybe that can bleed into further games.
Yeah, and Monty talked about it post-game. He said, if I had a shot like that, I'd use it all the time. So I'm curious to see if you get more of that from McAvoy moving forward. So that was cool to see him, rip that one through the defense.
Yeah, and my McAvoy's part of my opening shift, which is that what was most encouraging about that third period comeback to me was who led it, and it was your 3 captains. David Pastrnak, I thought, was awesome all night. Wasn't getting rewarded for it. He had the Bruins' first 6 shots on goal, ends up with 10 for the game, sets up the first goal to start the comeback with just a great steal in the neutral zone off Colton Parayko stick, and then sets up Morgan Geekie for Geekie's first goal of the season after being a healthy scratch the last 3 games. Got to give him some credit. He came back in and played well. And Montgomery said he saw it coming in practice. He saw Geekie practicing hard and starting to build his game. Then the second goal, Charlie McAvoy, nice stretch pass from his own zone to get the puck into the offensive zone. Then a little bit of a kind of scramble. Brazeau and Marchand free the puck up. Marchand feeds McAvoy for that slap shot you just mentioned. Again, good things happen when McAvoy shoots the puck. We say this over and over again, and then he always kind of slides back into not shooting as much and looking for passes and overthinking and holding on. And it's more of this, please. And then the third goal is the Pastrnak line and McAvoy and Lohrei on the point, just going to work in the offensive zone. Pastrnak, partially whiffs on a one-timer off a feed from McAvoy, but Bruins are all over it. They keep the puck alive. Lohrei throws it right to the front of the net. Zacha does a little Tyler Seguin in Game 7 against Toronto back in 2013 just kind of kicks the puck to keep it moving. Ends up going right to McAvoy. He sets Pastrnak up for a one-timer that just squeaks through Binnington and rolls over the line, but gets the job done. I thought McAvoy's really good all night. I already mentioned it with Pastrnak. Marchand was all over the place. And it's like, yeah, those are the guys you need to step up in moments like that. And they did. Montgomery also praised just their leadership on the bench, said like they were keeping the team upbeat and energized even in the second period after they went down 2-0. And I think our friend Andrew Raycroft kind of sensed that, because he said during the second intermission on Nesson that he just had a feeling a comeback was coming. He said it didn't, like there seemed to be something different with how the team kind of felt at that moment.
Yeah, Razor Stradamus. I'm going to call him that now every time we have Sunday skate.
Hey, let's get a ring to it.
What's your prediction? Yeah, he nailed it that time. He's always an optimistic guy though. So, but he was right. I thought he was going to be wrong. I was like, oh no, this team's not the kind of team that's been doing that. So, but he must have felt it. Yeah. And Tom, you said it was definitely different being there, and seeing what the actual vibe was. It's hard for me to believe that in a game that was that bad for the first 40 minutes, were they still like upbeat on the bench and everything? Like, is that what you were getting? Because they didn't look that confident in the first 40 minutes to me.
So I wonder, and I mentioned this to you guys before we started recording, I wonder how much of them, digging deep and trying to get that win despite looking so bad for 40 minutes had to do with the St. Louis fans. They treat the Bruins as if the Bruins beat them in the Stanley Cup final in 2019. They act like the Bruins are to them like Red Sox fans treat the Yankees coming to town. It's like, guys, you guys beat the Bruins. Like, you should be thanking them every single time they come into town. Like, the one banner you have up there, that's from you beating Boston. So, I mean, to hear it all night long and to see people holding posters of Marchand, the close-up of him crying, I mean, that's like the most circulated meme amongst St. Louis Blues Twitter is the Marchand crying meme. So, I mean, that has to piss them off, right? So they're having a season from hell, if you will, and they just had 2 awful periods, and they have this fan base of people screaming at them nonstop. It's like, all right, let's dig deep and beat these MFers. Let's go out and get this, and let's turn this thing around. And then you heard it in the locker room after the game. So I really feel like that had something to do with it.
It was Jim Montgomery's Stanley Cup. Because I think if they lost that one, that might have been the end of the run for him. He might have been going golfing after that. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I talked about on with Arcand and Hart yesterday, was like that the next 4 games, which obviously one of them's behind us now, but like the 4-game stretch that they're in with 2 games against St. Louis, a game against Dallas, and then Columbus, like they need to win those 3 games that are against easier teams. Like Dallas is going to be harder, but basically if you lose any more than 2, like if you lose out, if you're below 500 in those games, I think he's definitely getting fired. And then you really should have 3 of the 4, because you should be able to beat a team like Columbus and a team like St. Louis. And it almost looked like there was going to be another domino to fall towards it being the end of the line for Monty. That's just the feeling that we've had for a while. Like Scott and I went to a BU game where he bought that hat at, actually.
Great hat.
And
is that a snapback?
Yeah,
nice.
He bought that when we were there, but we were having a good time at a Guinness. We're drinking a beer, going, I hope they don't fire Monty while we're here, because we're gonna have to leave and write instead of.
Well, Bridget, last night, I mean, again, we're sitting here talking about a great comeback, a feel-good win that the team needed, can build confidence off of, but it's funny how razor thin the margin in sports can be, especially with job security, because you're talking about being 20 minutes away from being shut out for the 4th time in 8 games, and they would have came against a basement dwelling Flyers team on home ice, a basement dwelling Blues team, a struggling at the time and still Nashville team. So again, like it's not and you know they would have gotten pumped in Dallas tomorrow if they lost that game last night. Now I just think the whole tenor around the team changes. So again, it's a weird situation where they're 4-1-1 this month, but it feels like Monty could be safe for quite a bit now, and it's crazy how much that pendulum can swing.
I don't think he's going to be until like we get to Thanksgiving and you know what I mean? Like, I think there's still a few games that they need to win here.
They're over 500, and it's it's tough to fire a coach if say they go 500 the rest of the month, right? Let's say the rest of the month they're 500, and you finish the month like whatever, like 9-4, 5. Like, it's tough to fire a coach after a month like that.
Well, they need to string games together, because that's now the next step that they still have not been able to do. Is they've had moments like this where you're like, okay, that's something they can build on. The overtime win over Toronto, or the 2 wins in 2 days, even though it was against Philly and Seattle. Like, that was what they needed. It was back-to-back shutouts coming off a tough stretch, but they haven't been able to build that. Like, every time they have one of these steps forward, they then immediately take a step back, right? Like, get an overtime win against Calgary, and then the next game you land 0 shots on goal in the third period against Ottawa. Like, so if they go out there and lay an egg against Dallas on Thursday, we're going to be back at square one again, talking about why can't this team keep it together for more than one game or even just one period at a time. So, like, they keep kind of making reference to the, like, after the game, and Tom, you were in there, like, McAvoy said, every season you get a couple of these games that really feel like they can be important and kind of turning points. And Swayman said, we're going to look back on this game and remember it. And it's like, okay, well, you need to make sure that's true, right? Like, this game only means something if you actually build on it and turn it into that kind of game that you look back on and say, yeah, that was a real turning point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Scott, is this game can be important if they make it important. It needs to be the first step of many. And Bridget, I think you brought up a good point. Let's say they lose to Dallas, but it's a really close game and they look good, and it looks like they are going to be a more competitive team moving forward. And then they take care of business at home against St. Louis, and then they go out and they beat Columbus like they should. Then that's more job security for Monty, right? Like, you can lose to Dallas, but it's the way that you lose to Dallas that I think matters. And then you take care of business against St. Louis again. You go out and you beat Columbus. Now you're feeling a lot better about the direction you're heading in. Then 4-1-1 becomes, I can't do math on the fly here, 7-2-1. There you go. I did it. That you're feeling a lot better there if you can make things head in the right direction. I also think I got the math wrong there, but we're not gonna.
That's hypothetical.
We're not gonna go legislate that.
Is about, so
yeah, no, this isn't a math podcast.
But yeah, I wanted to react to Brian saying like that he can't get fired after that. Like, he definitely can, because even though.
Well, hold on, wait, hold on. Let's just what exactly did I say? He can't get fired.
You said like he's saved himself for a little bit here, and I just don't really think that's the case.
A little bit, I think, can be subjective. I mean, I'm not saying he's good for the year. I'm saying, like, when
he saved himself from not getting fired this morning.
He could.
That's it.
I honestly think if they lost last night 2-0 or 3-0, I'm not sure if they would have fired him after the game because of the logistics of firing a coach on a road trip. Like, I think it may have. They probably would have seen Dallas through. They probably would have seen that second St. Louis game back home. But I'm just saying, like, they've played 6 games this month, right? And they're 4-1-1. And I'm just saying, like, I just don't see. Remember who we're talking about here? We're talking about Don Sweeney and Cam Neely. I just don't think they're firing Monty. Even if they lose in Dallas, I just think they're going to give him some more leash that I don't think he had until that win last night. That's all I'm really saying. I think people are feeling good about. I'm just saying he bought himself a little bit more time. I'm not saying he is good for the year, but I'm saying he's bought himself at least.
I think he bought 3 games. Like, I feel like he's got 3 more now.
But where does 3 games take you? 3 games takes you to almost the end of November. So, and then you got Thanksgiving. You're not going to fire Monty on Thanksgiving. It's a family holiday. Come on.
Yeah, hockey, they're not, they have a heart in hockey, right? They think about these things like, oh, well, he's got to be with his family.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don wasn't at the game last night, nor was Cam. So, I mean, I know these things can be done over the phone, but again, hockey is like one of these gentleman things where I feel like they want to do these things in person. So that was something. It was funny because my friends in the St. Louis media, multiple dudes came up to me during the game when the Bruins were down 2-0, saying like, well, maybe Monty can just stay in town after they fire him and take over our team. Come on home to the Blues. Guy's got St. Louis ties. They really hate Bannister. Generally speaking, people in this market are just not vibing with what he's throwing down here for the Blues. So I remember in the spring, I got a text from a host that I used to work with in St. Louis asking, is Monty going to be out if the Bruins don't make a run here? Because we want him here in St. Louis. And I was like, no, I don't think the Bruins are going to fire Jim Montgomery if they don't, win the Stanley Cup this year. But things have changed over the last few months. And I do think he is a guy that does need to win, a few more games here to feel secure through the next few months here, because the seat is clearly hot. I mean, we're talking about it, and people in other markets are noticing it. And he's also a guy that's going to be a sought-after coach if he does hit the market. I mean, it was like my St. Louis media friends were like drooling over the idea of having Jim Montgomery come in and, right the ship here for the Blues. So it's really interesting.
That they could have
okay with letting those guys go, though. We've seen that.
Yeah,
right. Like what's best for one team isn't always what's best for another. Like you see good coaches move around all the time and like have success. Like that Montgomery's first year, I remember it was like 3 of the division leaders were all first year coaches and like all had connections. Whereas like Jim Montgomery in Boston, they were in first. He had left Dallas, who was in first with, I think it was Gerard Gallant at the time, was their new coach, who had left Vegas, who now had Bruce Cassidy and was in first. So it was like they had all just traded coaches that everyone knew were good, and for one reason or another, were no longer welcome in their city, where they had been. Yeah, maybe the Bruins and Blues could have just made a trade, and Bruins could have pulled Claude Julien off the St. Louis bench.
Yeah, it was cool to see him at the morning skate too, flipping pucks around to guys. Just looked in his element. Hockey's just one of those sports.
Goatee Claude, he's got a goatee now.
Yeah, he's looking fresh. Hockey's one of those sports that I feel like more than any, voice in the room is such a big thing. Like when I was here in 2019 in St. Louis, when Craig Berube took over, it was an immediate like, oh, they're gonna change this around here. And it still took a little bit. It took Binnington coming up and sort of being Patrick Waugh for 4 months, right? But it's one of those sports where when they make that coaching switch, there always seems to be that bump. Like, remember when they fired Claude and Cassidy came in right away, it was like, oh, okay, like they clearly needed a new voice here. Even, cross sports, when the Celtics moved on from Brad Stevens, who we all probably agreed was a really good coach, Ime came in and it took a second, but clearly they needed that new voice in the room that sent them on a finals run in his first year with the team. So sometimes that, I'd say outside of football, kind of a new voice can really help a locker room. But I think these guys really want to play for Monty right now. So I don't think they're there just yet.
Well, yeah. and Scott brought up the you guys all did, Bridget and you, Tom, but like you guys mentioned, it's about can be a building block of a win. Depends what they do in Dallas. For you guys, don't you feel, and maybe this is blind optimism from just like watching the sport my whole life and kind of seeing when certain games can kind of be that catapult, but didn't last night feel different to you guys for a lot of ways? The players who put you on their back, like it's almost like remember when a couple of years ago when Charlie McAvoy was out for the year and Hampus Lindholm took on this role because he knew he had to be the guy. It's almost like the second Lindholm left the lineup last night, McAvoy just flipped a switch where he just knew he had to be the guy on the back end. He became that guy. So if he's going, Pastrnak's going. Like last night, the comeback, you mentioned the Flames game, Scott, but the way that they won last night, it feels different, and it feels like a game where they can go into Dallas with some mojo and some confidence, knowing that Dallas got them on home ice a few weeks ago. Like it just feels like that. It feels like a different win last night than some of the previous ones. And so maybe I'm kind of projecting what I think might happen, but
I feel like it was a shitty win. Like, I'm not feeling good about I'm sorry. Like, I'm not feeling good after that game. Like, I'm still just sitting here going, oh, it was an important win, but it was a really shitty game.
I think we did a little Freaky Friday action here. I think I'm in Bridget's body and vice versa.
I'm not feeling better. I don't know about you guys. That was like one of the worst games. And sure, you end up winning against a bad team because everybody decided to pitch in at the end. But like those first 40 minutes were so bad that I don't think you can just like let Monty off scot-free for the fact that the message hasn't gotten through a majority of the time. Like even though they end up winning that game, like I feel like it still wasn't one of those ones where like, oh yeah, they're getting right. Like it could have been one good period against a bad team, and then they go back to doing what they've been doing. Like
so you're in wait and see mode, basically. Right. You're like,
yeah.
Sometimes
if they build off of this, then we can look back and say it was a good win.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair because again, they do need to build off it because otherwise, yeah, you're just gonna look back and be like, oh, they had that nice third period comeback, and what the hell did that mean? I will say, I thought. I did think they came out strong. I thought they played a good first period. They didn't score, but like they had the puck all period, and the ice was pretty tilted in their direction. And then the second period, I thought like this is where it all goes south. Like this is what's happened to this team all year. You get the Hampus Lindholm injury. You start taking bad penalties, back-to-back offensive zone high sticks. Just so unbelievably careless from first Cole Koepke and then David Pastrnak, where you're like, how does this team keep doing this? They give up goals on both of those penalty kills. As you guys have said, like, could not have been struggling more than St. Louis's power play was, and the Blues just get right against them. Like, you had some failed clears, some just leaving guys open. Like the first goal from Shen. It's a setup to Jordan Kyrou in the bumper that's like was telegraphed for like 4 years in advance. Like I think it was Buchnevich is like just holding the puck, and it's like all he's doing is looking at Jordan Kyrou in the bumper, waiting to pass to him. And Nikita Zadorov loses focus for like a split second and leaves that passing lane open. It's like, what did you think he was going to do? Like that was the only guy he was looking at. So like those kind of breakdowns, it in that moment, I had the feeling of this is where it all goes south. And like, this is their latest bottoming out. So to their credit, they made sure in the third period that that's not what it was. They actually did show some life and responded and dominated the third period, come back and win the game in regulation, which by the way is like also something I wanted to see because they've had a bunch of overtime games, and you wonder if sometimes do you almost settle into like just playing for overtime again. It was good to see them actually keep pushing and get that winning goal because it was there for the taking. Like they had control of the game. So I do think it's important to show like that killer instinct of we're not even going to let this get to overtime.
And Bridget, you mentioned that you thought the game was a tough game, and I will say this: like special teams put a massive dark cloud over I think the totality of the game as far as even strength. And Scott mentioned their first period, but one point I want to say is I feel like when you're a team that's struggling as mightily as the Bruins have been in a lot of areas, most areas besides, as Scott said last episode, their 5-on-5 defensive metrics, I don't think you're going to go from that to like a very crisp full 60. I think it might take a cheap, win like that last night to kind of get people feeling good. And then again, the big if they can build on that, then you might start to see some cleaner hockey. But I don't think you're going to go from a dark sky to a sunny day right away.
Well, if they don't fix the special teams, then that's a good enough reason to change head coaches. Like if they cannot get that right, they're going to continue to lose games. And you need somebody to change it up and fix what's broken. And if it continues to be broken, even in wins, I don't know if that's the best sign. Like there's still stuff that hasn't been fixed that a coach has to try to get right. And we've talked about this before. The players are very much to blame as well for not executing and not moving around. But at some point, like if it keeps not working and you're trying to make this a team that has success and changes its direction, then you're going to have to start to see consistently improved efforts on the power play and penalty kill. And right now, penalty kill for sure not looking good. Power play is worse in the league percentage wise. So that's why I'm not there yet. Just saying anybody.
For the record, I love it. Bridget, I love the new MO. I'm all for it. I think it's great. I think the accountability, especially on special teams, is 1,000% legit. And if it's not Jim Montgomery, whose job's on the line, it could be Chris Kelly's or somebody else's, but the special teams has to get better. I think a lot of this episode is very much a wait and see. Let's see if the confidence can help turn things around. If not, Bridget, like 1,000%, I'll be back here next week being like, all right, what are we doing here?
The group chat last night was not this positive, by the way, for either of you. So
I don't think I said anything in the group chat.
Oh, you liar.
Last night, I went to bed after the game. I didn't say anything.
Scott, I think
during the game, it was, in fairness, that was, I think, second intermission chatting, which there was no reason to be positive about anything at that point.
No. Yeah, it was grim at that point. But Scott, I think you had it in your article last night after the game. Pastrnak looked really good the entire game. And he had sort of a dominant performance, even though, it wasn't like he had a hat trick, right? But, he had a really good game. So, you use that as something you build off of because he's been someone that's been struggling. You use the McAvoy shot and goal as something you build off of here. So, yes, you're still struggling on the power play. Yes, you're still struggling on the PK, but at the same time, there are elements that happened last night that led to the win. You use those as the jumping off points and then work that into, okay, we're doing this, and this well. Now we just have to do that. We need to carry that over to these parts of our game, and then we're going in the right direction. And that's where a guy like Monty, who the team keeps telling us is really good at building guys up and building their confidence, you use those moments as a way to build confidence. That's where he's worth his weight. And that's what will save his job if he can harness those elements and, fix the other parts of their game that need fixing.
Yeah. And you saw, like, we referenced on our last podcast, Montgomery's post-game press conference Saturday night, where he was just like despondent. Like he just like looked like a ghost up there. Like he was just short answers, completely dejected, like telling media it's up to you to figure out why we're in a malaise.
He was going to read like your story on weei.com and be like, you know what? Scott's right. I think that is the problem.
Well, and the regroup that took place between Saturday night and Monday morning for practice, it was evident right away because they come out on the ice for practice on Monday, and Montgomery lines the whole team up on one side of the rink. And it's funny, those of us up in the press box at practice were like sprints. And instead, Montgomery grabs a puck, lines up on the opposite side, and like holds the puck out ahead of him on his stick and starts skating. And the goal is for everyone to just fire pucks at Monty and knock the puck off his stick, which Mason Lohrei, who is second to last in line, is finally the one who hits it. But it was like clearly just like a stress reliever, fun way to start practice. And Montgomery said they also had like a little bit of fun in a meeting beforehand. And he said, like, he told us, he was like, this is what I believe in, is that, like loosening up is oftentimes the better way to kind of get yourself back on track versus just like drilling guys and, being a drill sergeant and like the, work harder type of attitude. And, sometimes you need that too. So like, I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but he clearly felt like that was the right approach for this moment. And referenced it again last night, like or I think it was even after morning skate, like even before the game, he said the team was loose at morning skate. And it's like, it does feel like this team needs that. It needs to find like a reason to feel and to play loose, because I think all the team struggles combined with individual guys not producing the way they want, like it has led to a, tightening of the grip on sticks and guys feeling it and like putting pressure on themselves. And, probably like a little bit of levity, I think was needed for this group.
Did you guys notice last night during the game on Nesson? Well, so Tom, you obviously were in person, but on Nesson they were showing how there was a moment, I think it was actually in the post game maybe, where like Pastrnak was all, frustrated with himself. I think he said like stupid play to himself, and Monty kind of came over and like put his arm around him and like just like kind of like sheltered him and just had a talk with him. And it just seemed to kind of like, that's a good coaching moment. That's something you like to see in game for sure. I do think Monty has to have the ability to skate a team in a practice if necessary. Like, I don't think, holding hands all the time is effective. I think you have to pick and choose your battles. And this past week he chose not to, but I do think you have to have that in you as a coach. I don't know if Monty does. I don't know if Scott, if you've seen it at the practice before.
We've seen it before. I mean, we started last year. He wind sprinted them at practice. It's definitely a rare move for him. Like, I think it's clear that it's not what he wants to do. It's kind of a last resort, but we have seen him do it before.
I also think he doesn't want to give the media anything else to talk about in terms of like, oh, maybe they're not conditioned enough, because he's answered that question and he says they're conditioned fine. So like, it kind of makes it look like, all right, is this a conditioning exercise? Like, are they trying to make them get in shape and they're not in shape? Like, that would be a narrative that would come out of that. Just, I don't know if he thinks about that when he.
Or that's a good point, Bridget. Another narrative would be the media seeing this and being like, headline, Monty skates the Bruins during practice. And then if they go out in the next game and lose, well, now it's like, now he's got no more cards to play. And now it's like the team's completely tuned him out. And now it's time for a change.
Or if they win and it's like he's Herb Brooks, it's like, it's a miracle. Got those guys to fall in line.
Yeah.
So what you guys are saying is there needs to be a happy medium between Bruce Cassidy style and Jim Montgomery style. Like, if you need to be the hard ass, you can be the hard ass. If you need to be the comfort, you can be the comfort. There needs to be a sliding scale for this team to get where it needs to go.
Yeah, and even though we haven't seen Montgomery bag skate them, like we have seen him coach hard, right? Like, he got right in Marchand's face on the bench and shoved him, and he benched Pastrnak for a third period. Like, that is disciplinarian coaching. Like, that's hard coaching. So yeah, clearly he chose, for this week, he thought going the other way and loosening things up a little was the better way to go. So, you also can't be like bipolar. Like, you can't just swing back and forth between the two. There has to be some consistency in your messaging and approach. And I think, I clearly, like, Montgomery is mostly a positive guy. And like, that is, mostly going to be his approach. Tom, as you said, like we heard Trent Frederick talk about that at morning skate. He tries to build guys up. But we have also seen times this year where he has either, by plan or just emotional in the moment, where he has resorted to, kind of lashing out and yelling or benching guys.
Yeah, and I think a good coach in any sport knows that you can do that type of thing with a certain type of player. So a guy like Marchand, who's been in the league forever, he's going to be okay with a coach getting in his face and yelling at him, because Marchand is a crazy person. Like, he's going to be okay and just be able to brush that off. He probably needs that hard coaching. Pastrnak, a guy that's been in the league a long time now, he's dealt with tough coaching before, right? But a guy like Trent Frederick, little bit of a younger player, that's probably why he sees Montgomery more as like the nurturer, right? So I think that is, like you said, Scott, like a sign of Monty can do that if he needs to, and I think that is the sign of a good coach. So it does kind of feel like on this podcast I'm like building Monty up, but which is not normally how I am. I'm normally a guy MFing at my TV saying we should fire this guy, but I don't know. Maybe because I'm a prisoner of the moment here. Being at the game last night and seeing it behind the scenes and seeing how just fired up they were after that win, I'm now like, okay, maybe they really want to play for this guy, and maybe he does have these different cards that he can play. But they get blown out by Dallas and lose to St. Louis on Saturday. I'll probably be right back to, we got to get this guy out of here. Let's get a new voice in here. So,
yeah,
we're allowed to do that. That's the beauty of sports.
And guys, it really is razor thin. And again, in the third period last night, there was a video of Monty with taking a huge deep breath, like before they even made it 2-1. Like the levity that happened after that win for him is massive. I really think we'd be talking about him potentially being fired. I just think that when I talk about the leash that he gets from the win last night, I'm more so talking about it not from like, do I think he should have a leash for a month? I'm trying to put myself into the mind of Neely and Sweeney, and I don't think that it's their MO to depart with a coach that has a significant winning record in a month and fire him that month. So I just think that, you lose last night 2-0. Like I said, that'd be the fourth shutout in 8 games. Then you probably go to Dallas and get smoked. It's like, now you're not 4-1-1. Now you're 3-1, whatever the hell the record be. Tom, I can't do math on the fly either. So
you just subtract.
We're not good at math.
Well, no.
They don't lose a win in any of these scenarios.
They do. Yeah. If they don't win last night, they don't get the fourth win.
You're right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, yeah. I'm bad at math too. Remember.
Yeah. But yeah, so last night just changes a lot of dynamics, I think, for Montgomery.
Hey, speaking of math, I did want to take a quick trip to Advanced Stats Corner on David Pastrnak's game last night. I mentioned the first 6 shots of the game, 10 total. He played 23-49, 17-31 of it at 5-on-5, drew 2 penalties. Here are his during those 17 and a half minutes he was on the ice at 5-on-5. Bruins led in shot attempts 22-6. Scoring chances were 13-0, and high danger chances were 7-0. 97% expected goal share. Like just a crazy dominant game from him. And those are just kind of like silly analytics that like you just don't see very often.
He needs to do that in more games than just that one. Like if he can keep doing that, he'll get right. I mean, the big storyline out of previous to this game was is Pastrnak still set back from an injury, and like that stuff goes away when you start playing more like yourself, and people aren't looking for answers as to why you're not being dominant when you're a very dominant player historically.
You could tell post game that he really wanted that win. I mean, he even said it. He's look, that was a massive goal. This is a massive win, and hopefully we can build off of this. And you could kind of see sort of like the sigh of relief in his body after the game, just in the locker room when he was talking with us afterwards. So I think he really dug deep there, and he's a guy that hasn't looked himself this year. So, he's not going to give you a performance like that every single night. Like that would be crazy to expect that. But if he can give you 80% of that every game, you're going to be in much better shape, because obviously he's one of your best players. So you want to get as much out of him as possible without, completely emptying the tank in November, right? You want to be playing into June. So do I think this team can play into June? No, but they should be at least making the second round of the playoffs, right? I think that's like a very realistic expectation for this group.
Yeah. So, Tom, I think for the rest of the pod, maybe we'll get you out of here now. We'll probably transition to Patra getting demoted, Hampus Lindholm injury, what the Bruins do if that is something longer term. But did you have any final takeaways from last night or thoughts on the game?
I'm with you guys in that I think that tonight, the way we'll look back at tonight will be determined on how the next week and a half goes for this team. So if they can take care of business when they play the Blues again and then take care of business against Columbus, we're going to feel like this was the jumping off point for this team to kind of right the ship and save Monty's job. And then who the hell knows, right? But until then, it's wait and see for me. But last night was really fun, and I'm glad I was here for it. And hopefully it means something. So it's great being with you guys, and hopefully I can hop on again with you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Tom.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rest of your trip.
Thanks, guys.
All right. I mean, you just kick him off like that. That's not nice.
Well,
I still see Tom in the waiting room. Does he want to come back? Tom, you want to
No,
come back? Hey, he's back. All right.
no.
I didn't know how you guys have people leave. I don't know if you guys stop and then whatever. I'll leave now. See you guys.
Okay. All right.
Bye,
See you, Tom.
Bye.
Yeah, no, so we can, but I think, we'll probably transition to bigger picture stuff, which is Patra getting sent to Providence and fallout from Hampus Lindholm injury.
Yeah, guys. I'd like to get to my opening shift real quick. 47
In
minutes
fairness,
in.
that was kind of your fault.
That was not my fault. I said I should go first so that I could get it out of the way, but no. So here we are, 47 minutes in.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Well,
Yeah,
I thought it was like set up for you to give your opening shift, but then you reacted to someone else's, and then we were kind of just off and running.
No, this is not my fault.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's always your
But
fault.
I did want to talk about Patra. I thought it would make sense to talk about it first because obviously he gets sent down before the game. And we put up a poll to our followers to see how they felt about the Patra, situation, him going down to Providence for the first time in his career because they couldn't do it last year. Stays in Boston, then he gets hurt. This year's the first year they were able to send him down if they wanted to, and it didn't seem like they were going to. It kind of came out of nowhere, guys. To me, him even being scratched was a little bit of a surprise, and then you see it wasn't just a scratch, and all of a sudden he's in Providence, and then people like speculating, oh, it's just a paper transaction. No, he's practicing in Providence. He practiced there yesterday, apparently with Fabian Lysell and Max Jones on his line. And a majority of the people who responded to our poll, about 2/3 said they disagree with the move. 1/3 said that it's, that they think it's fine or good or they like it. But to me, I'm like I'm half and half. Like I'm 50-50 on it because there's no doubt that he could develop there more. There's things that he could work on, and Providence isn't necessarily a bad place to work on certain things that he needs to know for the system and protecting himself and what have you. But I also don't think the Bruins are in a situation, they're not in a place where they can just like take away offensive weapons because they're not scoring enough. And sometimes you see these little flashes from Patra, and obviously they can't just be flashes, right? But he still adds something to your offense that is unique. And being able to plug him in and keep him in the lineup, I feel like was a good option for them to have. Now, that being said, they can bring Patra back up at any time. But as of right now, like watching it, you're like, kind of felt like they didn't have the luxury of sending one of their creative players down. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's kind of my reaction. And like I don't hate sending him down because I do think, as you said, there are things he can work on. He can play more minutes. He can play in all situations there. But yeah, like that was my take was like, I would be worried if I'm the Bruins and I'm a team that's already struggling to score and to create chances. Like, even though it's been a little up and down with Patra, he is still one of your most creative offensive players. And he's one of your best players with the puck on his stick in transition, one of your best passers, setting guys up. His, the we went over this a couple episodes. Like his 5-5 analytics have been good in the sense that, he has the best Corsi, he has the best expected goal share at 5-on-5 on the team. Now that is in a, kind of a sheltered third line role. He's not facing top matchups. He's getting a lot of offensive zone starts. He's not starting in his own zone very often at all. But still, like the role you're putting him in, he is at least helping to drive play. The problem is that recently there had been that was not translating to chances, and that's not all his fault, right? Like you need a whole line to turn possession into scoring chances. And his line wasn't getting them. And the previous 2 games when he was mostly with Charlie Coyle and Cole Koepke, I thought they were kind of getting pinned in their own zone quite a bit. Patra had gone 4 games without a point. He only had 2 shots on goal during that time. So, his minutes had gone down. So, like, you can see where things were kind of trending, where the Bruins might have felt like, hey, he needs a little bit of a reset. And, like, we need to get his game back. Because when he first came into remember, he missed the very start of the season. And then when he first came into the lineup, like, there was a clear boost that he provided. And, like, clear just shot of energy that the middle six needed. Where you're like, yeah, like they didn't have this. They didn't have that speed, that creativity, that playmaking. And then over time, and again, especially those last 4 games, I think you did see that start to trail off, which I feel like his most vocal defenders online either disagree with that assertion or are kind of ignoring it. Like, I do think there had been a dip in his play. For me, it probably wasn't enough to send him down. I would have thought maybe like a game off, let him reset up in the press box and watch for a night. But I just like, I would have kept him up and let him work through it here. But I also don't hate, like, hey, go down against lesser competition, dominate, like find your game again, start to feel a little more confident, and then you'll be back here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I wouldn't have done it. I'm not in favor of the move. I'm not really losing any sleep over it. But what I don't like in particular was, Monty kind of mentioning, that he just needs to affect the game more. And you guys mentioned that. And, I hear that and I say, okay, so we're going to send a kid down who's got 4 points in 14 games because he's not affecting the game where it needs to be. And okay, well, when are we going to talk about the $5.25 million man, Charlie Coyle, that's on pace for 15 points?
By the way,
Trent Frederick is on pace for 15
had the
points.
exact same stats as Patra.
Worse. Wait, what do you mean? Like this
1
year?
goal and 3 assists in 14 games, like at the same time. Like they both had the same.
Well,
stats.
I think Freddie has 17 games played, doesn't he?
Oh yeah. So yeah.
So it's even worse.
And also much worse defense from Trent Frederick, who has been on the ice for a lot of goals against.
Trent Frederick and Charlie Coyle are tied with Brandon Carlo, but again, Brandon Carlo is not held to the same threshold. They're tied for last on the team in scoring among players that have played every game. I mean, again, Charlie Coyle's contract is 1 more year after this, and I know we're talking about Patra, but Charlie Coyle's number at 5'2", that's no one's gonna be complaining about that if he's putting up 60 points like he did last year. But I just have a tough time. Maybe I need to compartmentalize because one doesn't have to do with the other, maybe. But like,
no, but it's fair. Like,
right? Like, how am I going to be
asking Patra to impact the game? But the other guys are. There's also plenty of other guys that aren't doing that. So
right, and they have different. You're not going to waive Charlie Coyle or whatever like that. But like, it just to me, I want like Montgomery's or the team's the team's decision with Patra to me seems a little bit. It's like misguided frustration. It's like where's the call out of Charlie Coyle? Where's the call out of Trent Frederick? I'm glad Monty's rubbing Freddie's shoulders, but like again, for Coyle to be on pace for 15 points this year is I mean, I don't think he's gonna get 15 points. I think he'll be above that, but I mean, they have bigger issues Like I think one of the reasons that they could carry momentum forward into Dallas is because some of their key players got that mojo. Like if McAvoy is playing confident and playing the way that he can, like that's why it's frustrating to see him go, 10, 15 games a shell of himself, because everybody sees what he can do when he's on his game. But if those Bruins players are feeling good, you can get something going. But Bridget, to your point, like you can't rely on those guys every single night, and you need your depth scoring. So I'm great. Morgan Geekie found a score sheet last night. Thought he had a good game, right? But I didn't think Charlie Coyle or Frederick had much of anything last night.
No, and yeah, like obviously, unfortunately for Patra, like he's the one who can be sent down. As you said, like you're not waiving those other guys. They're part of the team. Their development is done. Like especially in the case of Coyle, obviously you can make the case that Frederick still is developing, some development left to go, but like he's pretty much there. So that's just a matter of those guys just need to find their game, and like that's going to have to happen at the NHL level. Patra is a 20-year-old second-year pro who absolutely still has like a lot of developing to do. And so you can do some of that in Providence if you feel like it's not happening as much at the NHL level, or maybe it's kind of plateaued a little bit recently. Montgomery he was asked at morning skate yesterday, like, what was your message to Patra, like on his way down? And he said, he told him, like, even though every player is going to view it as a negative to get sent down, like you have to try not to. And he said he highlighted examples of guys who, spend time in Providence and were better for it, like Marchand, David Krejci. I would have even gone more recent and said, like, Johnny Beecher and Mason Lohrei were up and down last year. Like they both got to the NHL, maybe thought they had earned a spot, ended up getting sent back down at some point. And I know a lot of fans hated that at the time too. I think both came out of it better for it. Like I think Johnny Beecher and Mason Lohrei came back to the NHL each time as better players. I don't think they went down there and moped around and like had it ruin their development, which is what I get like 12 tweets about a night on this stuff. Like, I don't think it's going to ruin Matt Poitras's development. In fact, I think it's probably going to be good for him in the long run. It's just like, it ultimately just comes down to like, is it needed, or could that development have happened at the NHL level? And do the Bruins need him in the lineup? Which, again, I would kind of lean towards yes, just because of his creativity. But, if it's a lot of ifs, right? It's like if Geekie keeps playing the way he played last night, then you're more comfortable with him in the lineup. If Coyle and Frederick find their games, then your third line looks much better. But, like those are still ifs for now. We don't know if Geekie's going to keep this up. Coyle and Frederick have not found their games. That still needs to happen. So, we'll see. And this could be as short as,
a road trip.
Right, like Patra could be back up Saturday when they're back home.
But so it does feel counterintuitive to like need offense and send Patra down. And also like think about a week ago when we did our mailbag, how many of those questions from fans were about getting Patra more time, getting Patra on a better line with David Pastrnak, and like people wanting to see him be given more responsibility and more opportunity. And then you see him get the opposite, right? You see him get sent down, which is obviously not going to be giving him more opportunity in the same way. So I think that's where the disappointment comes from. I think he's also just a likable person. I started to see a lot of Patra jerseys at Bruins games. So I think people just are disappointed in the fact that they know that he's a good kid and that they enjoy watching him. And so they don't want to see him go down, which is fair. Maybe if you live in the Rhode Island area, you can go see him for cheaper now. Go watch a Providence Bruins game, and you can watch him and Lysell maybe work well together. What if that happens? Like they're on fire in Providence, and then they bring them both up. I mean, what a crazy turn of events that would be.
we brought up Charlie, or I brought up Charlie Coyle. What do you guys think is what's going on there? What do you think that
You're gonna say malaise? We're gonna say what's
no,
the malaise?
I'm not gonna say malaise, but a little chicken malaise. But do you guys think his game is salvageable to give Boston? I mean, at this point, I don't know what 40 points this year at best. I mean, he's not getting 60 anymore. I mean, I don't. He needed to have a good start last year to be close to that range again. I mean, and if he's giving you, I don't know, 30 to 35 points this year, like what does that mean at his cap hit? And is he somebody that if the Bruins are trying to make a hockey trade at some point, like I'm not a hockey trade to sell, a hockey trade where there's risk on for both teams involved, but what do you guys, where does he fit at this point? Is he still right now he's on the third line, right? I mean, you have Zacha and Lindholm as your top two centers.
You
Right,
just down the center too. Like he's
right.
He's
If Pastrnak was back up, right?
Yeah, but like I don't think they have the luxury to trade a center or to like mess with their center depth at all.
Well, I actually think they have pretty good center depth. Like again, if Charlie Coyle's playing the way he did last year and he's a good second line center, well, yeah, of course you're not trading him. Like you need that player. But right now he's not even playing like even a decent third line center. I mean, he's having a really bad year. And so if that doesn't get on track, like I'm not ready to just trade him away right now, but over the next month or so, like if we're in December and we're still talking about like, man, Charlie Coyle has 8 points or, even less than that. It's like he absolutely has to get going at some point. Like at the very least, he has to be what he was before last year, which is a good third line center. Like he has to at least be that. If he's not that, then like to Brent's point, like what role does he have in this team? Like you might as well move him. So yeah, you would love to see him get on track to the point where he's back in your top 6, but like you can't really play him there right now. Like he's just not doing what you need a first or second line center to do.
I mean, prior to last year, right? His totals in Boston in full seasons, he had 37 points in 2019-20, which was abrupted by COVID. The following year was a shortened season, 51 games, 16 points. Then he had 3 82-game seasons in a row, 44 points, 45 points, 60. So obviously 60 is far exceeds what he normally put up, but those 40 to 45 points, he's on pace for 30 points less than that right now. So like people who say Charlie Coyle is not a 60-point guy and last year was inflated. Okay, sure, fine. Maybe he is a 40 to 45 point guy like he has been most of his career in Boston and in Minnesota. He's nowhere close to that either. So I don't know. He's a mystery to me. He's a power forward, power skater, and his skating is not. He's not getting any separation. He's losing one-on-one foot races. So that to me, Charlie Coyle always had an issue with finishing. He never had an issue with keeping up and using his size and speed. And he is right now, and that to me is what's alarming. And maybe that dates back to a mystery injury that he may have dealt with over the summer that we've talked about. I don't know, but end of the day, it's a results-driven business, and he's not doing anything.
Yeah, you just don't see enough of those shifts where like he just looks like a bull in the china shop where he's coming into the offensive zone with speed. He's holding off a defender. He's protecting the puck down low, and then sets someone up or gets it to the net or whatever. Like that's when he's at his best. And I feel like you've only seen it in very like fleeting moments this season. I will say like that weekend where they won the back-to-back games against Philly and Seattle, like he was mostly on the line with Zacha and Brazeau at that time, and like that line actually looks pretty good. Like they actually had a couple good games, but again, as has been the theme with so many of these guys this year, it's like it didn't continue. Like Zacha has continued, and they've all moved around to different lines since. Zacha, I think, has continued to play pretty well. Brazeau, I think, has continued to play pretty well for the most part. Still a little inconsistency in his game, but like he's getting there. Coyle is the one who kind of like it was like, okay, here's some positive signs. And I feel like he's taken another step back, like it's gone backwards again. So, which, if anything, I would have thought like he would have been the one who, okay, once he finds his game, like he'll keep it there, because he has generally been a pretty consistent player over his time in Boston. So to see it kind of take a step back again now is like, yeah, it is concerning. Like, until he gets it going for 2-3 weeks at a time, it's just not good enough.
All right. So one final thing before we go, we haven't touched on it, but just the Hampus Lindholm injury. I think at this moment that we record, we don't know the extent of any timeline, but hopefully he's good to go on Thursday in Dallas. But I'm generally speaking, if you get pulled out of a game with most of it to go, it's probably a little bit longer than just that. So just your quick reactions to that injury and what that could mean for the blue line. Could it give McAvoy opportunity to take over? Not that you want a player to be injured for that to happen, but opportunity, right?
Well, first of all, somebody's going to have to get called up. So I assume that will happen as soon as we finish recording. But because Peake's already out, and Weatherspoon was already in the lineup as a regular, and Peake's out week to week, which is, I worry that's going to be a long time, because normally they say day to day, even when somebody could be out for a month. So week to week is more of a serious designation anyway. Peake's already out. So if Lindholm's not able to go, and even if he's like questionable, like, you need to send a guy to Dallas quickly. So my guess is there might be someone already on their way to Dallas. We just don't know who it is.
I would assume that there will be an extra defenseman at practice. They're scheduled to practice in Dallas on Wednesday at 2:00 in the afternoon. So that there will be a defenseman there by then.
And we are recording this in the morning. So,
yeah.
We started recording at 9:30. So, Ian Mitchell is somebody that's been up before, and taken over some time when other guys were hurt. I don't know if you guys think that's probably the most likely call up. I mean, there are other options.
It would seem like the most likely one. He was also I believe he was the last defenseman cut at the end of camp.
What about Sweezy?
Sweezy had a good camp. Like,
I liked his camp.
Yeah, I like a lot of what he brings. Like, there's toughness there, physicality. Mark Diver mentioned Mike Callahan, who is now in his third season with the Providence Bruins, and has always felt like he's kind of like just below that like next call up. Like, he's maybe like 9th or 10th on the depth chart. But Mark Diver said he's playing the best hockey of his AHL career, so he could be an option to make his NHL debut. Jordan Osterley is putting up points. I think he has 8 points in 9 games in Providence. So if you're more worried about, hey, we're losing what Hampus Lindholm has brought offensively, maybe that's the option. But I don't know if Osterley's the defender that they're going to want to bring up. So
kind of skates like Grzelcyk a little bit. Osterley, that kind of like smooth, undersized defenseman stride.
Yeah. So I think Mitchell's probably the most likely choice, but there are a couple options.
We shall see.
All right. Well, we have a couple of
also, just the last thing I would note is, like, obviously, just if this ends up being anything longer than a game or two, like, just a huge bummer for Hampus Lindholm. I mean, for the team overall, but I think he's been playing so well this season at both ends of the ice. Just gets, as we said, like, just gets promoted to quarterback of the top power play unit, and it's kind of tasked with helping them turn it around, and then gets hurt. Montgomery, Fluto asked Montgomery on Monday, could you make the case that Hampus Lindholm has been your most impactful player this season? And Montgomery said, yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Like, you could pretty easily make the case he's been their best, most consistent player.
Yeah, and I don't know, did either of you mention it was a block shot, right? So, like, we know what the play was that happened. It wasn't like, he did a split, or like he, looked like we know exactly the play that seemed to caused the injury. Obviously, goes to the bench, goes down the locker room immediately after. It's not really a surprise. Like the situation is that he got hit with a shot, kind of looked like in the knee. But it's a leg injury of some sort. A lot of times blocking shots doesn't leave you out of the lineup that long. So maybe that's a good thing. It's obviously would be more concerning if it looked like a hamstring or ACL. Like, you know what I mean? Like block shots tend to be a bruise. Can it break bone? Yes, occasionally. So you're hoping it's not that.
I would be more concerned about a fracture if it had been lower in the leg, like even if it's hairline, like you see that sometimes if it's off the shin or ankle or even foot. That one seemed to get him like either knee or even maybe slightly above the knee. So like you wouldn't think it would break something that high up the leg. And he did skate off and like was on the bench for a minute. So I guess you hope it's just a really bad bruise. But obviously we just don't know right now.
All right. Well, we have to get out of here. We've kept everybody long enough. So thanks to Tom for joining us earlier on. And Bridget and Scott will react to the Dallas Bruins game on Friday morning. So thank you all very much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching this Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.